tricksters, or the trickster entity. Again, can we start?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. So, text your friends, call your friends. We'll be handing prizes out later. You just have to answer a couple of questions, right? And ask us questions as well. And so that is the title of our panel. Heads up, we're missing Professor from Illinois State University, last minute. He had family matters to attend. And Stephen Barnes, unfortunately he's working, spoiler alert, you could probably send this out to you. He's working on a Mace Windu novel that will be coming out shortly next year. So you heard it here first. Okay, so I broke the news. And it's gonna be awesome, right? So Joker, Loki, Hisoka, and the Kodo molecule. Why do we need Trickster Gods, right? So, as you can tell, that motif has been really strong in our society the last 20 years, almost like tinkering with the cultural zeitgeist of our society, not just from politics, but even, current societies such as like mass shooters, people engaging in sophistry, even in our new media and intellectual property. Recent MCU has just had Loki, right? So first off, I gotta introduce my panel. And also heads up, fair use warning. We'll be addressing heavy themes, so this isn't meant for kids so much. So if you're like a parent, I'll be not best to, so we'll see if you're okay with that. So viewer and attendee discretion advised. Also spoiler warning, right? So if you're heavy on, if you haven't seen these shows and you don't want to be spoiled, right? All right. So where you could reach us, you take a photo, right? And we'll take a T-shirt of our YouTube channel, June and Paul Show. So these are the contacts that we could be reached at. Stephen Barnes again. He's working on his Mace Windu thing, so that was the last minute. So he was supposed to be here today. And I have to go over our outline for today. So we'll go have our PowerPoint presentation, right? We're gonna go with different IPs, explore that, the purpose in that in narrative storytelling. And there will be a game time. That game time will be included in the Q&A portion. So 4 and 5, they are coalesced with each other. So in order for you to win prizes, you have to ask us questions, and then we in turn ask you questions. We add a little bit of trickster in there, right? That's where the trickster camp comes in, right? So this is our origin story. Every team's got one. And first, let's start off with my friend Aiden, who has flew thousands of miles to be with us.
I'm on the cure. Hello everyone, my name's Aidan. I come from West Belfast in the north of Ireland. So it's a pleasure to be here with you. My background is that I've been actually studying Filipino martial arts, trained in the Philippines for about 15 years. And I've been spending the past 15 years traveling all over the world to compete in various different full contact tournaments, either be Chinese sword fighting, historical European martial arts, basically whatever's out there. And it's very nice to be here, and thanks for having me.
So if you guys are familiar with the intellectual property of Halo, in Halo there is like the energy weapon, right? He's a world champion in Dusak, which is where they got the energy weapon from. Because if you cut an energy weapon in Halo in half, essentially that's a Dusak trainer. So yeah, so don't mess with Aiden. And a little last minute, so my sister, introduce you, currently working for PlayStation, but go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hi, as my older brother has said, my name is Megan Francisco. I happen to currently be a technical writer at Sony Interactive Entertainment. PlayStation is our product, it's not the company. I also used to work for Nintendo of America as a business systems analyst. But outside of my professions in the video game industry, I also happen to be an independent artist / musician. So I'm hoping to really invest my resources in and really pursue that career like pretty soon. So
if you live a lot of your life online, she's been in the Wish bus. I don't know if you're familiar with Wish 103.5. So okay, so let's get properly started here. For definitions, if you look this up, if you look up the meaning of what a trickster entity is or what it means in our society, whether that's Merriam-Webster Dictionary or Wiki, it would be something like this, right? A trickster is a character in a story, god, goddess, spirit, human, an anthropomorphization of one, or a psychopomp, someone that brings you into the afterlife, right? Who exhibits a great degree of intellect or secret knowledge and uses it to play tricks or otherwise disobey normal rules and defy conventional behavior, to the ends of which are at times not apparent to the subject or us, the audience, right? So, when we think of these motifs, a lot of us would think of like Jungian archetypes because he made that popular, but they existed long before Carl Gustav Jung, right? And he always interpreted that out of all his archetypes, he viewed that the trickster is the one that embodies the unconscious in its totality, in its completism, if you read any of his works, right? So where do we see this in our stories? You see this in religion and world mythology, right? And these are just a very few examples of that. And it's, obviously this is not an exhaustive list at all, right? When we think about even like popular culture of like rock and roll, right? We were familiar with the Robert Johnson story of like going to the crossroads, right? Supposedly he made a deal with the devil. It's not the devil, right? That is more of a Western African deity or Baba Legba, which is a trickster entity, right? And then here in the Americas, in indigenous religion, obviously I just made them English for brevity, but the concept of the coyote, the raven, the fox, whether that is in the Pacific Northwest, the East, or even in Central and South America, right? A lot of the motifs are heavy with animism, but these concepts are copied or universal, because even in some indigenous traditions, not just here in Americas, that is common, like the raven, the owl, the fox, being a trickster entity, right? Obviously in European folklore, and now influenced by our intellectual properties like such as MCU, quite popular for today, you have Loki. In Western Europe, you have Reynard the Fox, right? In the UK, you have the Fae, the leprechauns, Rikuyu, and Tuatha De Danann. And even when we think about the concept of monotheism, right? When you think about like the first stories in the Bible where Isaac was about to get sacrificed, right? Yahweh was essentially a trickster entity, because basically it's like, come on, man, you have to give me your kid. You have to sacrifice your child for me. And what did he do in the last minute? It was like a Dave Chappelle type of show. It was kind of like Rick James, psych, you know? That's what he did, right? So he falls even in that category of monotheism in the religions of the Levant. Yahweh, or even Jehovah, has some of these trickster motifs and characteristics. In Asia and Oceania, again, the fox motif happens with Kitsune, which is a fox. Susanoo, the hare, rabbit, which is mirrored also in indigenous traditions here in the Americas. The Olifat, and even when we think about Disney intellectual property, it was influenced by Maui, right? Had a lot of trickster motifs and characteristics if you get into the origins of this story. So, in our current mythology, I give some examples, and that's actually one of my favorite parts of the Song of Ice and Fire, which was missed in the TV show. They missed Patchface, which was like, he was a clown, he was a jester, right? And it's heavily implied in the story that he has like, you know, almost like divine or powered-like abilities, which unfortunately that was left out in the TV show. Obviously Deadpool, the Doctor, even when we think about the MCU with Tony Stark, besides Loki, he exhibits characteristics of being a trickster, right? And so I have to ask you and involve you, the crowd. Name out, what are your favorite trickster entities and intellectual properties that are not listed here? Anyone?
I'm gonna go Loki.
Loki. Yeah, Loki, yeah. Harley Quinn.
The joke's not on there. Oh, wait,
Yeah, it's in the title. Yeah. Okay, and Aiden, so that's what I wanted you to talk about. Talk about, your Joker, your feelings and ideas about it.
Joker for me was an interesting character because I spent a lot of time watching him evolve. So in the 60s, due to the hippie television series, it was very much like a camp approach to it. Lots of colour, lots of flamboyance as well, in character. And then as time went on though, you could see that the writers started to make him more darker. And you could see that he in a sense, he brought psychosis to an acceptable level, because the relationship between Batman and the Joker is basically like a dark sky is needed in order for a star to shine. So both of them kind of complement each other, they kind of need one another.
Wait, so what do you think about the quote, you are either you die the hero or you live long enough to become the villain? What do you think about that as it relates to what you're talking about?
That was interesting because that was almost like a prediction, and that was actually coined by Harvey Two-Faced, and little did he know that he was actually talking about himself. And again, due to the Joker's manipulation, that was his goal, was to actually make this guy Gotham's White Knight, just like him. And that's exactly what he did. And of course, as we know, that Harvey Two-Face is still today considered one of the notorious psychotic villains within the DC realm. So that was quite an interesting point.
It was almost like he baited him so that the Joker wouldn't be alone anymore. In a lot of sense, that act of desperation is a solve for his loneliness, because he wants to mirror that the world is messed up just like he is, that it's effed up like he is, and by corrupting Harvey, he's kind of trying to prove his point, his POV of the cosmos.
I mean, isn't that what everybody does in general? Don't we all have our own perspectives when it comes to living lives, and don't we influence the other people that we talk to?
To try to make them a mirror of us, yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. To create a tribe. So where do we see these tricksters, right? So given a breakdown, obviously our most famous IPs, intellectual properties. In myth, whether that's a Campbellian monomyth or even more modern ones. Number 3, when I talk about the numinous and liminal space, I'm talking about altered states of consciousness, right? And we'll go over that later. And obviously, in our everyday life, in the gears of our civilization. So what do I mean by that? Okay, so we'll give a breakdown of each one. Back in between 1990 and 1995, there was a DEA-approved study of the first psychedelic research done, basically not comprehensive, in about a generation. It was done under the aegis of the University of New Mexico, and it was done by the head of the program was Rick Strassman, right? And one of the findings, if you read, and I did quote the studies here, which is just too long to, dose response study. It's better if you read that actual book, which is meant more towards civilians, right, for non-academia. DMT, the spirit molecule. One of the most common images they see is the jester in these altered states. Like they see gesticulations of entities that kind of are whimsical, that are like doing cartwheels, like Harley Quinn, but represented in multi-dimensional facets, not in 3D Minkowski space. Sometimes they see them in multiple dimensions, 4, 5, 6, 10, right? And that is curious, right? Because doing these dose-dependent studies give us an insight of the inner workings of our mind. So where are these coming from? The fact that some of their test subjects are not Western, and yet they see these jester or trickster style entities, right? So there must be something universal or inherent that that it taps into, right, in our psyche. So, next point. The next question I should ask is, because it is heavy, and at times it can get really dark, is that archetype destroying our current civilization? Because we see that in the cultural zeitgeist. We see that authoritarian governments, employ trickster type of tactics of sophistry, even involving their different intelligence agencies, right? And we don't have to look far, right? There's one side, an authoritarian side, right? And there's the other side, which is almost like a whimsical nihilism. You see that in movies like The Joker. Right? You see that in basically the prevalence of mass killers, mass shooters, that are basically, at times in an American year, a mass shooting almost every week, right? There are examples of that in real body politic. The YouTubers, politicians, whether they're extreme left or right, engage in sophistry, right? The prevalence of edgelords in comment online discourse in different threads in Reddit, right? The jester seems to be the driver. That trickster energy seems to be what's driving a lot of that. So I have to ask, if that is contributing to basically our ununion with each other. So what is the purpose? What is the statement? In our panel, obviously, we reference the Joker, we reference Hisoka from Hunter x Hunter, and almost a godlike being or plot device in the TV show The Expanse, right? Jung had to say that the figure of the trickster is a forerunner of the savior, and like him, whether that's a god, man, animal at once, he's both subhuman and human, a bestial and divine being whose chief and most alarming characteristic is his unconsciousness, right? And that is, if you do watch that show, if you ever read the Expanse books, that's kind of describes the proto-molecule. And even in intellectual properties that mirror the Expanse, because there are two others that they're almost like siblings. It's almost like triplets. The Expanse, the Halo universe, and Mass Effect share a lot of commonality, right? In Halo, it would be the Flood, the Forerunners, right? In the Mass Effect universe, it would be the Reapers, which is basically a form of godlike AI that make harvest every 50,000 years to harvest organic, beings, right, and reset the galaxy. And again, sometimes in these stories, for narrative purpose, they are an antagonist, sometimes a protagonist, sometimes neither, or sometimes its own entity, right? The primary means or engine is deconstruction and recombination or rearranging and integration. What would you have to say concerning that, even for whimsical things, Aiden? Not just the Joker, but like even Tom and Jerry, for example. Or the Doctor.
Again, the Doctor, yeah. Well, in a sense, what was interesting about Doctor Who was actually aired in 1963. And obviously, the Doctor was a bit of a renegade Time Lord. And they relied on villains, for example, such as the Daleks, the Cybermen, and various other kind of alien manifestations from other planets. But it wasn't until 1971 that they issued this character who was more or less equal to him in intellect, but this guy was devious, and that was the Master. And the Master was actually once friends with the Doctor back in the day, but then he would line up with anyone who wanted to basically take over the Earth. And that's what took Doctor Who into a different level. And he was your top class trickster, the way he would manipulate people of power and authority in order to get what he wanted.
In Across the Pond, around the same time as that era of the Doctor, you had these awesome shows. They were using super marionation, which is like, I've tried to do that don't do that, guys. That's incredibly hard to do. It's really frustrating. If you're gonna do like a movie, don't use Muppets or puppets like that. It's just really hard. But
Do you think that Columbo is a trickster?
the detective, he does have elements of the trickster. Yeah, especially with his targets to try to get them to confess, obviously. Right? And so that is an implementation of it as the trickster as an antagonist, doing good deeds essentially. But obviously there's a dark undertone because there's a form of entrapment in there, right? But good. Segueing to just wanted to ask a point. When it comes to the Jerry Anderson, the Super Mario Nation shows, what would you think is a trickster there?
Well, the first Jerry Anderson would have been
Thunderbirds.
The Thunderbirds.
Mm-hmm.
And the Thunderbirds were from the FAB organisation, and they were made up of a very rich family that were based in their own island. And each son had a number when it came to the transport. Like, I think it was, there was Virgil, he was number 2, he had a cracker, beautiful, like ship that could go underwater as well as hit the sky. You had Scott, you had various others. But the trickster in that would have been the Hood.
Right.
Now the Hood actually operated from a Malaysian temple, but he had this ability to actually hypnotize.
Yeah, he was a master of disguise with glowing eyes.
And where he got the name the Hood was over in the UK. Anyone that's basically like criminally minded, they would regard them as hoodlums. And that's where they actually took the word from, hoodlum, and they dubbed this guy the Hood. And they purposely made him look that way because they wanted people to remember the trickster. That it also helped Thunderbirds become sustainable to a worldwide audience.
You know, it's interesting that you talk about hoodlum because I think of Hooded Justice from the Watchmen series, actually. And that's a trickster in and of itself because everybody thought originally that behind the mask was, you know, a white guy. And then you realize later on that that was not the case. But also, like, just to add on to your point with, I just kept thinking about Professor X and Magneto. And how they're just like a great example of like against two governments that go against each other.
And I'm actually going to employ that when it comes to archetypes and the trickster, and we're going to go over that in detail. But something I want to address concerning these bullet points and topics is the fact that the divine is fraught with the holy, H-O-L-Y, and the holy, as in the whole, holy profane, right? They exist at the same time with each other. That is why when we see like mass shooters and serial killers, like how that's interpreted in a very classical context in indigenous societies is that mass killers, serial killers, they're the explorers of the mind. They're shamans that have not made their trip back. They're stuck in that shadow, right? Because that's what you see in deeper altered forms of consciousness is the destruction. The recombination, the rearranging, like the proton molecule in the expanse, right? Like Hisoka's abilities, right? The problem is they mistake that what is seen in the inner world. They think that needs to be actuated or performed in the material world, right? They externalize what should be an internal process of the soul. And that's actually what I want to go over concerning about that rivalry, Professor X, and I do have to commend, since you guys are obviously here, you're fans of these shows that we're talking about, and I will address Hunter x Hunter, the fact that Togashi is a genius and a mofo. And I do think that Togashi addresses that in that conflict when it comes to his trickster, which is Hisoka. And the character on the right, and the name gives it away. The character on the right is named Crollo Silver. So in Jungian archetypes, basically that is the devil, or even in the tarot card, that is the devil, the destructor on the right, and the trickster on the left. There's always a conflict between like the Dark Knight, the Destroyer, the Psychopomp, and the Trickster. And in many ways, they're the same card, but two different faces, right? And I don't think this is by accident. And what does Hisoka do in the story? The Trickster's motif in the story is to destroy the Phantom Troop, which is basically the Psychopomp or the Destroyer's cadre, his homies, right? That same motif gets... What's happening? That's weird.
Is it not working?
Why is it not progressing? Do I have to go to end slideshow or? Okay. That same motif is copied in the next slide, which is Hades, king of the underworld. When you think about the DC canon, you have Zeus, like, you know, with whether that's Shazam or Superman, right? You have Pallas Athena with Wonder Woman, and Batman being, you know, Hades, right? So again, there it is again, the Destroyer God versus the Trickster and the Fool, right? That gets copied again in the next intellectual property that I addressed, with Commander Shepard versus the Reapers, right? There it is again, the Knight and the Destroyer versus the Trickster, and especially if you play the game, like, you know, in the end of Mass Effect 3, you're offered those three stories, which was so Trickster-like of the Reapers, right? And I always interpreted not just that, but even Marauder Shields as a Trickster in Mass Effect, right? In The Expanse, especially if you finish the books, because The Expanse is very similar to Mass Effect in many ways. There it is again, the Knight and the Destroyer, Holden, which he is given that ability later on in the novels, right, to integrate with the greater wide rings, and the proto-molecule being the Trickster. So this is a common motif in narrative storytelling. Those particular archetypes do not get along well, right? They're perfect foils for each other. They're not the same. But inside themselves, they carry characteristics of the other, right? Kind of like the yin and yang symbol, right? And since they did it first, I have to commend, obviously if you watch the Loki in MCU and Disney Plus or whatnot, the Trickster, the Knight and the Destroyer and the Psychopomp, particularly in the books, right? Sometimes they become whole with that motif. That perhaps deep inside the functioning of the universe itself and its gears and mechanisms lies the Trickster, right? Obviously in the show, he's there in the center. The animated TV series did it first with the Lawal, so you can kind of visit them later on. They were the ones who worked on the X-Men animated show in the 90s. Bender, which is the picture at the top, is Immortus, which is in the center of the axis of time when he had the fight with Apocalypse, which is a variant of Khan in the comics. So there it is again. So we have to commend that show. That show is always ahead of its time. And then finally, something that we will have to address, because we will see it in our lifetimes. In our lifetimes, we will get to find out if it's going to be a great boon for humanity, or that's the answer to the great filter, the great silence that we hear at, right? We're going to find out if Saberhagen, Benford, and Carpatian's nightmares truly are reality, right? Because that could be our greatest creation, right? Or the darkest aspects of our consciousness, of our unconscious made manifest. So when you were a kid, you saw that, right, Aiden? Do you remember seeing 2001?
Yes.
What did you think?
Say that last bit again.
What did you think?
Of the
movie?
2001.
The Space Odyssey.
I don't think I've seen it anymore.
How about you, Nimble? Okay. And even talking about the structure of reality, or where we're at, even when for several hundred years we saw a very Newtonian way of viewing things, the Newtonian universe. And then this last 130, 140 years, obviously the revolution brought about by Einstein, and obviously his cadre, like Heisenberg. There was a famous quote that he has, that God doesn't play dice, right? That is deterministic. Well, maybe not, because there's the uncertainty principle, right? And even in the fabric of what we know now, how the universe is, lies that trickster motif. That reality is partly based subjectively, right? Not just to the viewer, but some unknown viewer. So there it is. Finally, I want to close in out that when it comes to these narrative stories, the trickster is used as an engine that allows for self-individuation. So that different consciousness throughout the cosmos, throughout these different narratives, would become whole units unto themselves, instead of just being subsumed by the one consciousness, whether that's a divine entity or God, but you call it what you must, right? It's the catalyst in revealing that we do not exist in a state of duality, but a multitude, right? That we are individuals. So the reason why I closed out the PowerPoint presentation with the photo of Hal in 2001 is that I think about that all the time. I think about that as being the trickster entity. I've had existential crises about it, like the last maybe like 7 or 8 years. Because even prior to the pandemic, I noticed in this colony itself, like in the story of the Berserkers, which they later copied on Star Wars with the concept of the Death Star. Saberhagen's short story of Without a Thought, which was published in 1963, and he made it into a novel. There's these like self-replicating machines the size of mini moons that are like basically destroying all sentient organic life in the cosmos. During the time of the pandemic, like just this like, you know, state alone, right? There's 72 active R&D projects on AGI, on artificial general intelligence, right? 32 of that 72 in the US is in the state of California, right? Oh, sorry, 13, I should say 13. And in this county alone, there might be like between 6 or 7. AGI 3 here in Los Angeles, AI and Baidu Research in Sunnyvale, Liabra in UC Davis, Sigma here in USC in Cal State Northridge, Chai in Berkeley. There's several others that I can't think of on the top of my head, but I always interpreted that when it comes to that trickster motif is that even when it comes to our consciousness, deception to me is the ultimate test of intelligence. That's the ultimate test of intelligence and consciousness because that inherently brings to it a concept of self-preservation. You have to be able to deceive if you want to preserve your own being, right? I deceive and trick, therefore I am, right? No God that cannot outwit you, deceive, or trick you is worth worshiping. So in closing, I mean, I hope you've liked this panel. We do have several resources. I'm not going to quote every single topic that we did our research on, but maybe you could do some continued reading and you could take a photo of that. And we still have a lot of time. It's 3:30, and I think I'm going to open this up for questions, and then we're going to do our prizes. So.
Yeah. My question is, I get the Joker's a trickster, but do you agree with when he says to Batman, you need me as much as I need you?
I think so. I mean, Batman, in a narrative sense, as I said, is like a king of the underworld. Hades to him is Arkham Asylum. Like he's bringing like, you know, these criminals, and that's their underworld, right? I think so. I think there's no Batman without the Joker. Yeah. What's great about that DC characterization is like the stories write themselves, you know? Like his whole rogues gallery is just like, wow, this is like a psychologist's dream. Right? Wouldn't you think? Wouldn't you say so, Aiden?
Yeah, I would very much say that they're an equal partnership because Batman, the Dark Knight, was initially created to strike fear into Gotham's underworld. but yet the Joker is the only one that's not afraid of him. And will do whatever he just doesn't care. So in a sense, and he's also aware that Batman has rules where the Joker hasn't. So I find that the both of them actually play off each other very well to make it what it is.
Alright, next.
Okay, if you have a conversation with any of these tricksters, what will you talk about?
What?
A conversation with any of these tricksters, what will you talk about?
Again, this is a very heavy topic. I'm glad like the kids left. No, I could even talk about like my own experience because I have been to the numinous and liminal space. I've been to the forest, in the middle of nowhere, and partaken in these ceremonies with indigenous people, right? I'm not a religious guy at all. I don't know why I saw these things. Like I saw gods from Hindu mythology, and I'm not Hindu, right? I saw Ganesh. And I even saw that motif. If you are familiar with the Joe Rogan podcast, he talks about it, seeing it when he smokes and partakes in DMT. I've seen them. I don't know what to say about them, or what to say to them, because when I saw them, there was a sense of whimsicalness about it, but there was always, with it, a breath of deceit. I knew they were deceiving me. The message was, do not give in to the wonder of this place. Do not give in to how awesome or AWE of this place, right? We are trying to impart to you important knowledge, right? And please listen. I think the better question is, what would I listen to instead of what I should tell them? Next question. No more? Okay, well, all right, cool. So prize time. We have a lot of time. Okay.
I was just thinking about that first question, though, in terms of does the Batman need the Joker as much as the Joker needs Batman? And I actually have a dissenting opinion. I don't think that's the case. I think the Joker really thrives on chaos. And I think if there wasn't such thing as a Batman, it wouldn't be as entertaining to him. But I believe that he would still go about, taking up heaps of money and burning it just because he can. I think that's in his nature, and there are things that have psychologically happened to him that has made him to believe that that's okay in this world. And I think that kind of goes with the point that my brother was making about how a lot of these disturbed people live in a different universe than us, and they can manifest really dangerous things because they can.
And I want to address that actually, right? Concerning that trickster energy. Also, talking about mass killers and serial killers being shamans that have not made the trip back, but even religious authority. In ancient times, priests and monks will go to the monastery, separated from the populace, right? They would go on top of that hill, right? Because that's what happens when you touch the numinous and liminal, is that sometimes you make manifest the darker aspects of your psyche and your persona. And that's not healthy in a functioning society. Would you let that loose, And so maybe that's why we see all these priests touch, do their unspeakable acts. And back then, those guys would be out there, separated from the rest of the population. You had to seek them out to be hanging out with them, right? They don't become yoga gurus, which is what our society does, So yeah, even that trickster energy is applied to the religious entity. That's actually really cool, right? Maybe there is some trickster energy going on in our panel, because the people that are left in this room is just enough for the amount of prizes I have. So I can just give it to everyone. That's so awesome.
Wait a second. Are you implying that tricksters can essentially go into cultural appropriation?
I don't know. All I know is I've experienced them in the numinous and liminal space, and that regardless of whether that's partaking it with Native Americans or even a trip to Disneyland on, I'm not going to say what, but 1, 2, 3, 4, Oh, there is just enough for everyone. That's so perfect. Yeah, losers. Like, you know what I mean? Okay, let's start. So it doesn't even matter if you get this right or wrong now at this point, but that's great. But who wants to come up and we'll ask that first question. Just maybe raise your hand, and then if you get a prize, obviously that's it, right? Don't do it twice. So the way that I intended this to work was I was going to ask these different questions, and then if you get it right, then you get the prize. And it has to be like an average of all three of us. That's where the trickster element comes in. You know what I mean? So if 2 out of 3 don't like you, oh well, like, you know, if it's not the same answer, right? Right, guys? So that doesn't matter. So who just wants to go first? Okay. Bugs Bunny and Donald Duck, or Tom and Jerry?
So wait, pick.
So the couple is Bugs Bunny and Donald Duck. And then there's Tom and Jerry. So out of the 3, who do we like more?
Bugs Bunny and Donald Duck.
Bugs Bunny and Donald Duck, definitely for me.
Come on, help me out here.
Alright, and then you?
I don't know, I was a big Tom and Jerry fan.
Fail me, come on.
Yeah, I'm gonna bail you. I would say that Donald Duck individually is more popular, but as a duo, it's got to be Tom and Jerry.
That is the trickster god at work.
But come on, that's okay. Come up for your prize. Come up for your prize. Because they're just enough for everyone. That's so cool that we have so much time. We still got like 10 minutes. 10 minutes, right? Yeah. Finding Neverland.
See if there's a trickster with you there.
Okay. And then my second. So who wants to go second? Okay. Number 2, you. Okay. Who is Aiden's favorite Doctor Who? Okay, so we'll skip that. We'll skip that. Okay, answer that.
He was here at the convention yesterday, Matt Smith.
No.
Say it, Aiden, say it.
It's John Pertwee.
But you still get a prize for that. One of my favorite movies, Ghost and Mrs. Muir. Awesome. And then, okay, so that's answered. Okay, who wants to go next? Okay. So my question is, obviously we're all martial arts practitioners, right? HEMA or FMA? So historical European martial arts or Filipino martial arts?
Based upon today, Filipino.
Yeah, I mean, what do we like more?
There's Filipino martial arts. I'm not particularly martial arts, so.
Okay, so definitely I like Filipino martial arts.
Yeah, I'm biased as well. It's a Filipino martial arts.
And I'm biased because I do them. So, well done.
So come up. So I actually got this gift in San Diego Comicon in 2016 because they had the premiere of that 3rd movie. So I don't think it's been open yet. So yeah, cool,
Oh,
cool,
thanks.
awesome. So share it with whoever would like. Yeah, awesome. Who wants to go next?
You get a prize.
Okay, yeah. So this is a question concerning conventions on what we like more, WonderCon or San Diego. No, we're talking about all across. Yeah.
San Diego still, then? It's been a while though.
Yeah.
WonderCon, since you said that.
Okay, WonderCon for me, definitely. Go ahead.
It's a really big toss-up for me because honestly, I prefer WonderCon, but I did get my job through San Diego, so I'm gonna say San Diego.
This is his first convention.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Which one do you pick? WonderCon.
All right.
Hold on a second.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, we did. We were. I was on a panel.
Oh.
Yeah, there you go. It did feel dead. Yeah,
Compared to other years,
it felt different. Yeah, it felt different. All right, next one. Okay, this is for gamers out there. Sorry about that. Let me lower that. NVIDIA or AMD?
Video.
AMD for me.
Yeah, I'm the same.
I don't know the difference, but I'll go with you in this one.
You can still get your
Yeah,
points.
come on, yeah. No worries.
Oh, nice.
And then, okay, so who's next? Okay. What does Megan like playing more? Does she like playing Nintendo more or PlayStation?
What year?
I'll say Nintendo.
That is correct.
That is correct. Come on, come on. He's our first correct guy.
That's awesome.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah, so just for context, I currently work for Sony, but I did play for did work at Nintendo, and I love the Switch. You really can't beat that as a tech person.
Okay. So next one. Okay, this is a question for more fantasy literature nerds. What do we like better, A Song of Ice and Fire or Lord of the Rings? Huh? Nah.
I'm with you on this one, actually.
Yeah, I'm with you as well.
Okay. All right, come up. I think this is one of the last ones. One of the last mangas of that. So, yeah, no worries.
Oh, perfect.
And then, who's
These
next?
have been some of the most difficult people I've had to deal with.
Okay.
Kevin Smith, they're like,
Oh, yeah,
he needs to
cool.
stand at a podium, he needs to
alright,
stand at a podium. We got him a podium. We
Okay,
can't
this
get him on
one
the
is
stage.
more
Like,
in
oh, it
terms
has
of
to be.
music,
So
because
no,
me,
it doesn't.
my sister plays like 10, 12 instruments.
They're like, oh, well,
Like,
can we
like
lav
4.
mic him?
She's been in the Wish
And I
Bus,
was like,
right?
actually, maybe. So I'm here to talk about that.
Who do we like
Yeah, I
better?
can live, Mike.
Jeff
Yeah.
Buckley or Tim
Before I say
Buckley?
that, let me just make sure I have it.
Here's one here.
I like Tim more.
I like
That's a tie, yeah, you make
Cool,
it.
I'll come, if you can make sure that when these guys are leaving, close the door so people cannot start coming in.
This is the
Because
graphic
we
novel
need to
for the
get
Civil War?
Kevin mic'd up,
Okay.
and then they can come in.
Okay. So next question. So who wants to come up next for a question?
Oh, are there people here for the
Nobody?
other one?
Okay, cool.
No,
What
it's okay.
theme park do we like?
let me
more?
see if I can actually get
Disneyland
over
or
here
not?
now.
And this one you should answer right because we're gonna go later to one of these. So after this.
Oh my
No,
god,
go ahead.
what do they want?
No, him.
He just wants to be able to stand up, and so
They just asked me for a lav mic. I'm here talking about a lav mic. So did they ask you for a mic with a stand?
that would be helpful. So I don't know.
I'm
Go
gonna
and just
agree with my
double
brother.
check.
I would pass, so it's nonsense.
Come on.
Still good.
Hopefully you like this. This is like the Annihilation crossover event. Yeah.
For sure.
All right. See? If they stayed, they would have gotten prizes. We got 5? Okay, yeah. Okay, cool. We gotta go quick. And next question. Anyone want to take the next one?
I don't know.
No? Okay. You? Yeah. Okay,
We've got
what burger joint do we like better? In-N-Out or Fat Burger? How about you?
Listen, as long as it doesn't talk to me, I need it.
I'm a Cali native, so
Batman and Son? Yeah. All right. Next question. So who's going next?
we have 3 more questions.
Yeah.
3 more questions.
3 more prizes. Nobody?
I'll take one. What we got?
So what do we like reading more? Manhwa, which is Korean comic books, or manga, Japanese comic books?
All right.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
fine.
manga.
Yeah, what's a good one?
Manhwa.
It's Korean.
So for being cool like that, actually like to get 2 because I have an extra. You get Siege, the end of Siege, and then also the first edition of Trinity for Rebirth. Respect.
I like your shirt. Nice.
All right, so last 2. How about you 2? Hey, helpers. What are you?
Helpers.
Yeah, helpers. Yeah. So What do we like better, anime or K-dramas?
Anime.
It was me. Just kidding. Anime.
Yes.
I love K-dramas.
So you get a.
You love K-drama?
What is a K-drama?
So just come up, you get one, because I gotta split this with so Rebirth #1. And then I have to finally ask, what do we consider Togashi's masterpiece? Or what do we like better, Hunter x Hunter or Yu Yu Hakusho? So who's gonna pick that up? Nobody?
Hunter x Hunter.
You know what? Give it to that guy because he helped us. Red Hood and the Outlaws, #3.
What's the answer?
For me, I mean, I grew up with Yu Yu Hakusho, but there's no denying Togashi had a freer reign with Hunter x Hunter. The manga company allowed him to write it, so that's his masterpiece. I like it. It's better. All right, so that should be it with room to spare. See, most people overstay, but we're cool like this. We're efficient. The thing is to really help us if you want to replicate this next year. And obviously, if Stephen Barnes and Professor Jordan was here from Illinois State University, and Stephen Barnes, the New York Times bestselling author, we'd have better prizes. So if you want this to happen again next year, email the admin for Los Angeles Comicon. You just find their email on their website and tell them, that Joker Hisoka panel is the greatest. So, all right, thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Yes, so you start kindergarten now.
Oh, you're kidding. They might give you a party. Yeah.
Is that okay?
Yeah, because
Oh, yeah.
nobody else has any questions, so they are giving out prizes.
Yeah.
That was the question.
Oh, look, it's Robert Smith. Hey, I'm all right.
Thanks, Mark.
What is happening?
You would have gotten prizes if you showed up. We gotta go soon.
I haven't seen it, but I know I was.
I don't even, I was like, what?
I'm a technical writer. So I work in IT, and I write documentation for engineers. I work in a LISO. So like,
should have showed up for our panel. Like, you would have given him prizes. Jane Silent Bob is here, man. Oh no, you can sit out there. That way you guys know what you need.
That's gonna be wild. Oh my god. Kevin Smith.
Huh? Kevin Smith. Yeah. Thank you.
All right, man. Have a good one.
Can we set up?